Hello, AP Microeconomics students. Here is a tax incidence example for you to study up on prior to the final, the unit exam. So the first step you have to do is figure out how much the tax is. The tax is going to be $1.50 per unit. You can figure that out right here. So step two is to figure out how much I am going to decrease my supply, because whenever you put a tax on something, it is a pig net example and a decrease in the supply. So we have to go up $1.50. So the supply curve moves by the amount of the tax. And so if you look, follow over here, this $3, all the different dollar amounts apply to the line below it. So this is $3, this is $3.50, this is $4. So the equilibrium right now is set at $3 and a quantity of 8,000. So we just have to go up 1, 2, 3, and then here's going to be a point where we're going to be able to draw in, be able to identify, we need to put a dot in here to identify how far up that is. So we're going to go ahead and draw a little dot right up here, and that's going to show us where that I have to connect it. And I'm just going to go down here, and I'm going to go up $1.50. 50, 50, 50, and here is $1.50 here as well. Okay, so we just have to connect those two dots now with a line. So you have to be really careful when you do this to make sure that you have a very straight line. If your lines are going to be off, folks, then what ends up happening is that you find out that your amounts are going to be off. So what we do now is we have to draw down and figure out what our quantity is. So the step 2 or step 3 in this example is to draw our quantity down. So this is our new equilibrium amount. And so we look at where this equilibrium quantity is and we draw a line straight down here. So when you do your test, you have to make sure that you either have a ruler or use something that's going to give you a straight line. So now we can see our quantity ends up changing to about 6,500 from the equilibrium of 8,000. So now that we have that, what we have to figure out then is we have to get our the price that the consumers pay and the price that the producers pay. So we've moved our supply over, we've drawn our quantity line down. Now we just have to put in what the new price points are. So here is the price, the new price that consumers pay. And here is the price that the producers are going to receive from this. And if you can look right in this area here, we can actually figure out, and let me see if I can do this here. We can go from this point to this point right here, right? Well, that didn't really work out too well, did it? So you can see what I'm talking about. This point right in here from the 350 or the 3, looks like 375 to 225, that is, and that should equal $1.50, which is the amount of our tax. All right, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to delete this thing right here since that was a mistake and I didn't want to do that. So now what we have to do is figure out where the original price is. I want to break down the consumer burden, break down the producer burden, and figure out how much our government revenue is. So if I go through and we want to figure out what that original price is, so then here is the original price point here. I draw a line straight in through here. And so now we can see here's where my original price is. Here's the new price I'm paying because we have a new equilibrium point and the new quantity. And the difference from this 375 to the 225, that should be $1.50. And that should be the amount of the tax. And so you have to make sure when you're doing a problem like this, that when you draw these lines straight over here, that you make sure that this amount equals our $1.50. So if I can go in here and try this, the difference from the new price down to this price here needs to equal $1.50. All right, I've said that 14 times now, so I think that hopefully should be driving that point home. Now, if we have an original price of $3 and we have a difference of 75 cents above there, because this is at 375, we know that there's going to be a 75 cents per unit burden. And if we can take that and we look at 75 cents and we multiply that times 6,500, what we end up coming up with is 4,875. So that should be, if I can go down here and highlight this amount here for our burdens, the consumer burden is going to be 4,875, and let's go up to and figure out what our total overall government revenue is. if we have 6,500 as a quantity, you take 6,500 and you multiply it by the $1.50 because that's how much the tax is. So that should equal $9,750. And if we take the overall government revenue, we have our consumer burden of $48.75. We do the same thing over here for our producer burden. We have to figure out that here's the original price of $3. Here's the new price of $2.25. The difference between $3 and $2.25 is 75 cents. So again, we have to take that 75 cents and multiply it by 6,500, which is our quantity, which should come up with 4,875. Now you can see right down here that the consumer burden and the producer burden are the exact same thing. And so what that tells us is that both of these supply and demand are fairly unit elastic, or that they actually have the same elasticity is probably a better way to say it. So because they have the same elasticity, that's what it's going to show us. So you have 9750 as the overall government revenue, and if you take and add up both of these, they should equal 9750. And if you're going to be asked to shade these things in, well, all you have to do is go from this line in here, and this whole area in this whole box right in here is your consumer burden, right? And then you go in and you have to figure out what the consumer burden is going to be, or what the producer burden is going to be. So we'll go through here, and I'm going to highlight this area right in here is going to be our producer burden. And so we can say the same thing. I can do a better job of highlighting up here for you. And so that area here is the consumer. And so really your whole area up here, folks, ends up being the government revenue. And you separate and figure out, well, what's the difference between the original price here and the new price that consumers pay. The difference there is consumer burden. And the difference between the original price and what the sellers actually produced, that's the producer burden. And so that's right there how we figure this out. Now, one thing we didn't mention in class, so if you're seeing this, you're going to get something that the rest of the kids are not going to get. And what that is we're going to go through here and do a pen, and we're going to highlight this whole area here, this whole triangle. Can you figure out what this whole triangle is? And if you said it is deadweight loss, you are dead on. All right, so this area up here, that triangle is deadweight loss. If you can figure it out, here's the original 8,000 is the quantity. New quantity is at 6,500. And so whenever you lose transactions, that whole area is lost surplus. And so lost surplus means lost transactions. So that's going to equate to a deadweight loss for us. So I hope this helps. And if you have any more questions, you can certainly let me know. Send me an email, stop in. And I want to make sure that you have a full understanding of how to do a tax incidence problem.